for joining me, Brenda, Keeley, Tamika, for coming and talking about moms and marriage. I invited you all here because you each have a unique perspective on this idea, and we know that as moms, we are multifaceted, and so our marriages help us to really grow and to thrive and to kind of help to realize some of our dreams. So let's get right into it.
Okay.
Why did you get married? Age-old question, right? Why did you get married?
Well, I'll start. So for me, I think it was always something I wanted. A lot of people ask, are there certain boxes that you want to check off, when you become an adult? And I was that kid who knew I wanted to be married. I wanted to have a family. And fortunately, I met my husband early on. Did I know he was going to be my husband initially? Maybe not, but I met him early on. So after years, we were probably 14. I was 13 or 14 when I met him, and it seemed like a natural progression, right? It seemed like the right thing to do. We were friends first, and, obviously it grew from there, but we were childhood sweethearts, and then it just, for us, it was the next best thing. So.
Yeah. What about you all? Brenda, Keeley, why'd you get married?
I don't even know. But like her, as a girl, as a young girl, we know, like, I want to be married. I want to have a family. Not always wanting children per se, but I knew I wanted marriage. But I didn't know when it was going to happen. You go through different boyfriends and you're like, oh, I'm going to marry him. And then, oh, I'm going to marry him. And none of that works out until it's the right person. And I think once John and I, we had a friendship from high school and we started dating, and he was just, my mom always says, I remember when you introduced me to John and you was like, Ma, he's different. He's different from anybody I ever dated. And she reminds me of that all the time, and he was. And so it was like, after that, I was like, okay, you stuck with me now. And when he proposed, it was funny because he would fake propose like all the time. And so when he really proposed, I was like, shut up.
You didn't think it was real?
No, and we had drinks before, so I was tipsy. I was like, shut up. And the whole time, and then I started crying when I saw the ring, and he was like, you never said yes, though.
Oh, wow.
I get that story too,
like,
but I never quite said
yeah.
yes, right?
But yeah, it just happened, and yeah.
Nice.
I think when I met my husband, I met him online, and he was probably the most straightforward guy that I talked to, and I was tired of people who would just like, oh, well, Brenda, I like you.
Kicking all that game to you, right?
Like, nothing comes from that. And you're just like, okay. But he was one of the people that would say something and then back it up with action. And I appreciated that. And then, even I was one of those type of people. I was like, look, I'm not going to be dating nobody. Like, I'm 29, whatever I was. I'm not going to be dating you for all this time. Like, we grown. Like, it's one thing, like, when you meet somebody when you're younger and you have to continue to mature and like, stuff lasts, takes a little bit longer. I'm like, look, you 30-something, I'm 20-something. Like, we going to, do this. Yeah. So then 6 months later, we had a Christmas party together. Like, we threw a Christmas party for our family and stuff like that. And right before that, he proposed to me. And one of the things that I realized about him was if I could get through anything with anybody, I could get through it with him. And, like, I think, an important part of marriage is knowing that, all right, we're not going to like each other all the time. Things are going to get a little rocky. But if we know that we could come back to each other, we could get mad or whatever is going on, but we can come back to each other, everything will be okay and we'll work it out. So I've been feeling like I've had that vibe with him. And I was like, you know what? I think that even though we haven't known each other that long, I think I can, work through things with you to the point that we can make it work and, we could be happy together.
So speaking of the work, what's your thought on marriage as a partnership then? Some people talk about marriage as just being about love or marriage as a business arrangement. Obviously, we are, recognized by the states that we got married in.
Yeah.
It is a legally binding document that we signed on, that whatever minister signed on. But what are your real thoughts? Do you look at it as a partnership, as like a loving relationship, or is this a business kind of relationship that you're in, or is it all three?
I mean, it's a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
A little bit of spice, a little bit of, we got to talk about, bills and how we going to make things work and how things will go, who's paying for this, who's paying for that. When you bring in children, who's picking up here and who's picking up there. So I found that it's a nice mix of everything where it's not just like, all right, we're just going to talk about business, but then trying to, make sure we have fun too and all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
That's what I found so far, but I'm only 2 years in.
I think it looks different in different seasons of your marriage, right?
Good
So
point.
depending on what it is that you're going through, where you are personally, where you all are as a couple, depends on what roles you take on, So kind of to your point, when you have children, the partnership becomes real, because your child or children need both of you in two totally different capacities. Then you think about teamwork, some couples, they have businesses together, they have, different ventures that they set out on, so then that takes on a different type of relationship within the relationship. So I really think, it evolves. The longer you're in the marriage, the more opportunities that you pursue, the different lanes, life happens, and then you have to just take on different roles. But I think if you're in it long enough, you'll tap
Each and
every one. Yep.
Yeah.
I definitely agree.
Yeah. So then what about compromise? That's a big word, compromise. I don't think it's in our vows at all, but I definitely put it in mine. So I wrote my own vows.
Oh, nice.
And I talked about, I'm going to work on compromising. I'm going to work on listening. These are the things I'm going to work on, but it's not always easy. And my thought on compromise is, I think for people who aren't married, sometimes is that they look at it as, if I'm compromising, then I'm losing. Compromise for some people can equal a loss. But it may not always, it's not supposed to look that way. It's supposed to be designed so that you can be able to get some pieces of what it is that you want. I can get some pieces of what it is that I want. And then we can collectively be able to figure out what's going to work for our household and for our family.
Exactly.
So then what are your thoughts on compromise?
I think it's important because sometimes, like you touched on, sometimes we don't see the view or the perspective of what they're seeing. So like for me, I didn't want a second child, but I compromised, and now it's the best thing that I've ever done, and it's difficult, and we've compromised on different things, jobs and, home buying. We've compromised on a lot, and sometimes I don't initially see it, or he doesn't see it my way, but it works out because we balance each other out. It's whatever my strength is may not be his strength. So I think compromise is truly important in a marriage.
Yeah, I don't think you can have a happy marriage without it.
Exactly.
I think it's a work in progress, and again, kind of like what I said before, I think it looks different in different spaces, and I think, I may be able to compromise on where we're going to have dinner every week, but you may have to compromise on what we're giving up in our dream home, or, I may have to compromise on whether or not I'm going to take a job close to home, and so all of those different things evolve, and I think it's hard, I think compromise is a lot easier said than done.
Yes.
But I think, again, if you don't have the understanding that you have to do it, then it becomes impossible to have a happy marriage. You may not always succeed, right? Like it may go back and forth, but I think without it, it's the recipe for failure.
So you said a really good point, that if you think that you don't have to do it, then it's going to make it difficult. Are there any other things that make it easy for you to compromise? Like obviously a non-negotiable that somebody's going to have to do it. It may be you, it may be him, it may be you all, obviously collectively, but what other non-negotiables do you have that make it easy for you to say, I'm definitely going to compromise?
So for me, it's honestly his happiness, right? His happiness and our happiness collectively. So those times where I'm on the fence about compromising, again, when we're thinking about larger things, we're not, talking about surface level things. it becomes a matter of what is going to make us as a family whole and happy, you know, and if my compromise can help guide that decision, it makes it a little easier for me. But, you know, kind of to my point earlier, you have to recognize that you're going to have to compromise at some point. And there are people that their non-negotiables are a lot higher, you know, than those things that they're willing to negotiate, and that becomes problematic, you know. I think, you know, you have to take that L sometimes, and you have to take it with a smile on your face, and it's for the, you know, the betterment, if you will, of the marriage. But
that's my hardest. Like
Just to
compromise is probably hard for me. Like I wouldn't be able to be real if I didn't say that. My husband would look at me like,
if he knows the real you, right?
Like, okay. Is that what you think? But like, it's hard for me sometimes because I could get in the, well, I'm right about this, or you know, but I think that this should be this way or whatever else. And he's like, well, what about what I think? And I'm like, well, what you think matters?
Just this much, right? What I think matters this much, and you're like right down here,
What I
right?
think matters. And I'm like, well. So I've been, you know, that's something I have to continue to like bring myself to be like, all right, this is us, this is our family, this is what we're doing,
Right.
And what can I do to make it a little bit, like what you said, a little bit easier on the vision for the family,
Right.
versus just like, oh, I don't want to do this, so that's just what it is, and that's like point B. But then if he doesn't want to do something that I want to do, then it's like, hold up, now you need this, So it's been a challenge, but it's something that, you know, I'm more aware of now of being like, oh, you can compromise on this.
just a little tidbit. You do the compromise on one end, it comes back your way full
Yeah.
circle.
Yeah.
It does. And again, it may not be that day, may not be that week, may not be that month.
year.
But it comes back around. And again, I'm not saying that it becomes a tit for tat type of thing, but it is one of those things that, you know, over time, I feel like my husband has begun to recognize, oh, she made that concession for me. She made that sacrifice for me. So, you know, I'm thinking, all right, I had to give that up there, and it may not be instant gratification.
Right.
I don't want to say that, but there have been times where he's like, you know what, this one's not even worth the fight.
If I look at something, if it's with work, if it's a short-term project, then I really want to get what I want out of this because this is getting ready to be over. But with my husband, this is for life. You know what I mean? So I got to make sure that if I am compromising about something, or if I'm conceding and I am saying, okay, you take the lead on this, then I have to understand that it is for the better good of our household, right?
Absolutely.
So then let's talk kids. We are all moms. Obviously, this is mom chat. So we are married women. We are mothers. We each have collectively one, two, one, and one. So we've got collectively these little babies, and we're all boy moms.
Boy
We are all boy moms.
Yes,
Hashtag boy moms.
Yes.
So how did motherhood impact your marriage? Or did it? Or did it?
It definitely did. We had Hunter before we got married, and so it was just different. You're learning how to be a mom, and I remember him saying in the beginning that he wasn't jealous per se of our child, but I put everything first when it came to Hunter, and so, oh no, you're gonna have to wait. Like your needs are gonna have to wait. And then when we moved into our house, like our first year of marriage, we were new parents. We bought a fixer-upper house, and it was just hit after hit, blow after blow, and learning how to be a mom and a wife in the same year was like, yo, get me out of here.
You like that commercial, want to get away?
Yeah. I'm like, this is ghetto. I don't like it here. Get me out of here. But you know, we pushed through. But that first year definitely was a hurdle to get over. As a mom, it's like, yeah, no, I wasn't ready for this. And it's just a lot. Even now, even today, being married 5 years, like balancing motherhood and wife life it's true balance. It's like, wow, okay, this is a lot. So I salute single moms, but I'm like, y'all don't understand. I gotta be a wife and a mom. It's a lot. It's a lot. So yeah,
Catering to two different people's needs.
Yes.
Who are on two different ends of the spectrum.
Exactly.
You know, although the husband, love him dearly, is a grown up version of that, but it's still on two different ends of the spectrum.
Yeah.
So what about you, Brenda? How did it impact your marriage?
I mean, so like I said, I've been married 2 years. My son is 1. So, and I knew my husband a year before we got married, 1.5 years. So we were getting to know each other still, and just in that process. Then you bring a baby along, and then he's like, okay, you know, what happened to, you know, pre-mom Brenda? Like, what's she like? And I'm learning myself, and I'm seeing this baby, and I didn't have any kids in my family. I'm an only child. I have one little cousin, and we're 16 years apart. So I'm learning a baby, like a whole baby. And I'm like, you a grown man, and this is a baby, and I gotta figure out like what I'm doing and all that type of stuff. So it really made me take a break and say, you know, we need to make sure that we really plan some of this time together. And that was a little bit easier when your kid is more in the toddler phase, and they can be a little more self-sufficient and all that type of stuff. But I really had to sit there and be like, you know what, this is important, and I need to do better at making sure that we have time together, even if it doesn't mean we're going away for the weekend,
Right.
but just being able to say, all right, let's put him to bed or whatever it is, and watch TV together or whatever it is. So learning.
Do you all make that time? How do you make that time? So for you, it was, you know, realizing, okay, on that weekend away, I got to really put this stuff in. What else do you all do? Do you have dedicated time?
So, I guess for us, me becoming a mother definitely drastically shifted our relationship, you know. So we've been married for 12 years, but we've been together for over 20, right? So my son's appearance in the world meant there was no more solely Ron, solely Tamika, and we had to really adjust to that, you know. And that was definitely a challenge for us because we were so used to focusing all of our energy on just each other's wants, each other's needs, and now all of that stops. You know, you have a child and all the energy goes into understanding and learning what it means to be a mother, you know. And so it becomes challenging. And, you know, to your point, I remember 6 weeks in, I had my mother come and I was like, we need a break. And we literally went 15 minutes away. And we stayed, you know, overnight or whatever. So it wasn't far. Of course, I'm on the phone every 10 minutes. What is he doing? Is he okay? But that was when we realized, like, this has to happen. You know, some type of time away outside of the house, away from the baby. And it's interesting because people have so many different perspectives on that. Oh my God, you left him already, you know. I remember my first trip away from my son. He was 1, barely. I don't even think he had turned 1. And I had people in both ears like, are you sure that's what you want to do? And you know what, it is. And I was able to go away. I was able to enjoy myself. And yes, I was on my phone, and yes, I was worrying, but I realized not only did I need time away with my husband, I needed time away with myself. So back to your other point about how do we make that happen, we don't have a lot of family necessarily where we live, so we can't always say, oh, we're going to go out this night on a specific week. So it may not be a consistent date night for us, but literally pillow talk. You know, it's our time, especially on the weekends, where we just talk, you know, about any number of things. It could be an argument, it could not be, but it's just an opportunity for us to kind of reconnect. You know, my husband's not a phone person. Some people are able to communicate, you know, when we talk on the phone during the day, it's agenda, you know what I mean? So we really look forward to that time when we're just super relaxed, super chill, and being able to really have conversation. And then when we do have date nights, or, you know, we have an opportunity to go away, then we can really focus in on the fun, you know. So that's really important for us.
Yeah, my mother-in-law a couple years ago, maybe Trey was about maybe 3. She maybe even 2 or 3, but she said at that point our nephew was in high school, and so she's like, I want to have a day of the week with both of my grandsons, and I want to pick them up from school or daycare at the time for Trey, and so that day became Thursdays. She said that can be you all's day to just go and just do whatever you need to do. Go and have dinner together. Go and do whatever together. I'll pick him up. I'll take care of making sure that he's bathed, teeth brushed, ready to go when you come pick him up, scoop him up, and go right home. And thankfully, they live around the corner. So they're super close. So we have had consistently Thursday date night for several years. And for a while, I wanted to cut it just for some financial reasons, because I said, if we're going out every week and spending money, and let's just cut it. But when we don't have it, I miss it. It's like that's our uninterrupted time. If it's for 2 hours, it could just be an hour and a half. We are sharing a meal. We're catching up, because getting up and going, he's out the house at 7:30. I'm out the house. When he comes home, it's about 7 or 7:30 at night. I go to bed around 9. We just check in. Hey, how you doing? Good. How was your day? Good. Okay. This is what's going on with Trey. I'm in the bed. So we don't get that time, but it's that time to just sit and just talk about everything else other than what's going on with our kid. It can be work stuff. It can be family stuff. It can be planning for something, that we're doing. But I do think that time is really important. And when we don't get it, I can tell. I feel it. I want it. For that 1 week that I said, let's not have date night. Let's save money. And he kind of gave me the side eye, and I had to stand firm. And he compromised. He went with it. But then in my mind, I was like, dang it, I miss it. It's Thursday, and it could just be going to get, I don't know, some dang on wings or a French fry or something. But it's just us, and I think it's really, really important.
That's a good one to do. Let me tell my mom. I'm like, Mama, watch the video.
And get on Arthur one day, right? It could be bi-weekly, you know what I mean? Like starting some of that, because then it gives the grandparents some of that uninterrupted time too. And
but the other thing is, it's interesting because as they get older, so you mentioned you have a toddler. My son is almost 8, and so for the last several years, he's very clear about the attention that he wants from his father and sometimes from me. So even when you think, oh, we can just, I don't know, go watch a TV show or go watch a movie and hang out, it's a totally different vibe and experience when you can literally disconnect. You know what I mean? Get outside of the house, get outside and do your own thing, because my son is famous for getting in a conversation that he does not belong in. And you know what I mean? And it can kill your whole vibe, or you're trying to talk around things and use code words and things like that. And that's a different vibe than just kicking it, with your spouse and being able to have a good time and really let loose. So
I feel like we've been blessed, because when Hunter was born, he's the first grandchild on my husband's side. And so we had like joint custody with my in-laws. Like,
oh wow.
It was like Thursday through Saturday we don't have Hunter.
Wow.
And so
nice.
You got blessed.
Okay. And so people would be like, the Carters, y'all lit, y'all stay lit. So we would stay out like doing stuff, and even now we have a great support system. Like his parents will make sure they get the boys, once a month for a weekend. My mom comes over a lot. So we do a lot together, but sometimes, like you said, in the house, we're not able to communicate. So we went on a trip, and Hunter's godfather was like, dang, Keela, I didn't know you talk this much. And I was like, you don't understand. I have to get all of this out because I don't get to talk to my husband in the house. We communicate through text a lot. Hey, did you put the fish sticks in the oven? Like that type stuff. But when we get out, we make sure we do date nights regularly. And I telework, and he's 100% telework. And so when the kids are at school and daycare, we don't have to worry about a sitter. So we'll say, well, you want to do lunch? You want to go bowling? I'll take my laptop to the movies. I hope my boss don't watch this. But, we make that time, and sometimes it's just...
That's what you got to do.
Okay, and sometimes it's just watching Chicago PD or Chicago Fire in the middle of the day, So it varies. It's not always extravagant, but it's just making that time.
Something.
Watching Power. That's our that is our date hour. A good Power episode and then a 30-minute debrief. We connect on a regular level.
We did that last night. The baby was little. Watching shower at 2 in the morning.
And he's just knocked out. He doesn't know what is
Right.
going on,
Nothing.
right? Yeah. You can have date night at home.
Blanket.
You can have date night somewhere else. We could go to the dang on Applebee's or something. Like, it's just
to go to the park.
uninterrupted time. And that's the thing. So that's how we, connect as wives with our husbands. Now, how do you all maintain your own identity as women? Still being moms, still being wives. How do you maintain still being Brenda, Keeley, Tamika? What do you do to keep your own identity?
I've always been me. And a lot of people, even our married friends, they're like, y'all are just like a whole vibe. Because I'm like, listen, I went into this marriage turned up Keeley. And I'm always going to be turned up Keeley. They're like, your husband drags you out of every party. And I'm like, yes, because he knows who I am. I will never change myself. But this year, I would say 2019, really evolved for me because I met a lot of moms, Crystal being one. The mom tribe, women, and I connected on a different level. So a lot of times he's like, you going out with your mom friends again? You got another mom event? I'm like, yes, I have another mom event.
It is a lot of it, right? It's a lot.
I'm like, it's a lot of mom events, but I just, just try to just be me. And he understands that. And I think teamwork and partnership and compromise and balancing helps that. So, yeah.
Yeah, I would have to agree. I think before we got married, before I became a mom, I always had my own life. And I'll never forget, I have a girlfriend who has said to me on numerous occasions, I love the fact that you all have lives outside of each other.
Yeah. Not everybody can say that they have a spouse who is supportive of their dreams. He has went off and pursued, multiple degrees and traveling and this and that. And I'm like, you go do your thing. And people have looked at me and said, you just let him go to New York for all this time? I'm like, let him. He still is a man. He still is a professional. He still has hopes and dreams. So again, there's some of that compromise that we can talk about a good system and a way for that to work. And the same thing with me is that I think he realizes that I am still a woman first.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And I still want to be accountable to myself that if I have an idea, if I have a plan, I want to pursue it. Thankfully, he's like, hey, use the house. I'm good. Not many people would say, go ahead and use my house, or I have to be gone for a little bit longer, or having people in my home who I may not be as familiar with, but still maintaining, I think, your own identity as a woman outside of Mrs. So-and-so or mommy is extremely important, because I think if you lose yourself, it may be hard to get it back. It may be really, really hard to get that back.
I think one of the things that I had to do is I started going to therapy. And honestly, that helped me. Having somebody say, Brenda, you need to, when's the last time you did XYZ? Like, oh, yeah. I read a book. And that was great. I'm a reader.
That's big.
I love reading fiction.
Yeah.
And I just enjoy it. And I spent some time and I read a book. I was like, okay, I'm going to read a book by myself. Or I love hanging with my mom. Somehow something happens and triggered in our relationship where we just became really close, close friends. So I love going to hang with her sometimes, or some of my other friends just hanging out. And my husband, he actually would be like, Brenda, go, go do whatever. And even with I started a podcast, and he was like, man, Brenda, you could do this, you got it, man. Man, da, da, da. And he listened to it. He was listening to the episodes, and I was like, I don't know, his mom's so different, why you want to listen to it? But he, would listen to the whole thing, on his own, and supporting, what it is that I'm doing. But Brenda, what do you, when I'm trying to do an interview, he'll take Arthur upstairs if Arthur's not asleep yet, and be like, all right, I'll take him upstairs while you trying to record. And he doesn't complain about it, and that's been good, because that's something that I felt like, I can do. So most of the time it's me holding back, and he's trying to push you out there, to be like, Brenda, get your life, do it, you got it. So
if he's giving you, giving you the card, take it.
Wipe it up.
That's right.
He's you need this. Go ahead and do it. How can I support you? Because on the flip side, when he has things he's starting a business or whatever, and I've been, supportive of him and trying to help him pull it together and get some things in order and give him ideas and things like that. And he's like, well, this is cool. I got it. you know, we got this going on, but don't forget about you. Don't forget about what you're trying to do too.
Yeah.
So that's been helpful.
Absolutely.
I think it helps them I think it helps them to grow a certain level of respect for you
Yeah.
as well when you have your own drive and you have your own, you know, identity. And it speaks to their security in themselves, you know, because there are men that don't support, you know, other ventures. There are men that, you know, well, where are you going, and don't go here, and what time are you going to be back? But you know, when you have that foundation in your relationship, and you have a man who's secure in who he is, he doesn't become intimidated by you having an identity outside of him. He doesn't look for you to identify with who you are through him, and you shouldn't.
You kind of touched on it a little bit, Brenda, about what you did to really take care of yourself. So one thing is that you know, started going to therapy. When you think about taking care of yourself, and we had this conversation offline, but it's more than I'm going to get a pedicure, I'm going to get a manicure, or I'm just going to go and take myself to dinner. But it's actually spending some time to kind of do that work on yourself and say, I'm gonna, like, I recognize that something is kind of missing, or I recognize that I used to do this, but I don't do this anymore, and I really can, you know what I mean? Because motherhood should, in my opinion, just enhance already what is present. It shouldn't necessarily take away who you are. But you know, I think, I don't know about you all's parents, but looking at my mom, she didn't really put herself first in that way. And so now later in her later years, she's beginning to put herself more, and really has put herself more in a lot of those ways. And so I've been able to look and say, well, look, I'm going to put myself first here. I'm going to put myself first there. I'm going to put myself first there, because if I don't, then I'm not going to be able to show up right for anybody in this household.
Right. It's that oxygen mask on the plane.
There we go.
You know?
Put it on yourself
try
first.
To remember that.
Yeah. It is a lot of things that get in the way. You know what I mean? Just like when that mask falls, you're like, oh, but I got dinner. Oh, but I got pickup. Oh, but I got to do this. Oh, but I got to do that. But again, if you don't stick that thing on your face first, nobody is going to be right. So thinking about self-care, what do you all do to really take care of yourselves? You know, you got motherhood on your plate. We've all got different businesses. We all work full time. Lots of responsibilities. What do you do?
I know one time at the end of last year, you know, sometimes you get the week in between Christmas and New Year's off. And Arthur still had daycare one of those days. And I told my husband, I'm like, that day is my day. So anybody, like, that's my day. Like, I'm taking that day. And I went to the movies by myself. Like, just went there. Had a night, like, I think I got Chick-fil-A in the morning. And went to the movies. And it was just lovely. It was amazing. And I told myself, I was like, you know what? This is going to have to at least be quarterly, you know, for the year, where I just take a day off and go to the movies in the middle of the day when nobody's in there. I went to a matinee for $5.
Isn't that something?
Like, I was like, oh my goodness, is this what it's like? And that, I mean, to me, like, that was something where I was like, shoot, I took myself on a date for under $15. Like, went to Chick-fil-A and went to the movie. Man, I got myself a large drink. I was like, shoot, it's only $6. I can get a large drink. So, I mean, that was something that I feel like I'm going to implement at least quarterly this year, being like, okay, I want to see this movie. I don't have to worry about daycare. I mean, you know, like, worry about who's taking care of him or whatever else. He in daycare. I can go there in the middle of the day, turn off my phone, you know, turn off my work emails or whatever else, and, you know, go for it. So that was something for me.
And you still remember it, which means that it made an impact on you enough to, again, just like the trip with your husband you all took to say, I'm going to do this more often because of how you felt. So that's the whole big piece about it, that feeling still has stayed with you, and that you liked how that felt. What else do you all do?
I definitely do the movies by myself a lot in the middle of the day. But also, like she said, having our alone time with our friends. You know, he goes out with the guys, I go out with my girls, which is usually my crazy sisters. But, because I have 3 sisters, but they're like my best friends, you know. So we go out and we have a good time, or they'll come over the house and we'll have some drinks and kind of just talk about things. Also, talking to him is self-care to me because it's a lot of times that I need to get things off my chest. I need to release so that I'm not stressed or I'm not worried. And, you know, just talking to him gets me there. It helps. So,
Yeah, I think for me, it's whatever feels good for me in
Yes.
that moment. So
Yeah.
I think you kind of said it. Sometimes it's spending time by myself,
Yeah.
and that I love because then again, there's no one else's agenda. There's no one else's anything to consider. But then there are times where I really want to be around people. So it may be with friends, and then it may be with my husband.
Yeah.
It may be maybe with a family member. But it's definitely doing what feels good in that moment.
Yeah.
Like I
Yeah.
really enjoy going to like the spa and just being there all day.
Yes.
And really just
Yeah.
getting lost in my feelings, and my thoughts, I'm sorry. And just sitting there. And I remember the very first time that I was at the spa, literally, I left the house at maybe like 8. And I didn't get back home till like 8 that night. And my husband could not conceptualize what I was doing. Because I said, I'm going to get a massage. So for him, he's like, okay, an hour, maybe two, and then travel time, you'll be back. And so I think I text to communicate, oh, I'm still here. And when I got home, he was in his feelings, like, and I was like, listen, first of all, I don't need to explain it to you. But, it's not, it defeats the purpose. You're rushing to get there. You're rushing to get back. And it wasn't until he experienced it for himself that he's like, oh, now I can go when he asks no questions.
Yeah.
But, again, it's what you need at that time.
Yeah.
So now let's just talk about some advice. What's been the best advice that you all have received about marriage? One of the pieces I got, I don't know if it's necessarily the best, but it has made me think, is, this whole idea of not going to bed angry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I've done
It
it.
is hard.
I do it.
Listen, I preface this by saying I don't think it's the best.
Yeah.
I think it is very hard
It
for
is.
me to, especially if maybe we get into a disagreement at maybe 8:30, and I go to bed early. Maybe I go to bed at 9 o'clock.
How do
We're
you
supposed
get
to get
over
this
it?
wrapped up by
Yeah.
9 o'clock. I don't really know, but I
Sometimes
think
you
the
gotta think
idea.
about it.
Yeah, I think the idea behind it maybe is more of don't let things linger.
Yeah.
Right? Don't let
Yeah.
them linger for too long.
Yeah.
And so that's what I've gleaned from it. But I may go to bed a little bit irritated and maybe even angry, but thinking about cutting off some of the days, maybe I'm not going to carry on with the silent treatment for too long. You know what I mean? But not letting things linger. So what's been some advice? Or maybe something that you've even kind of gleaned from it.
Do not think you can change a man. I think that has been the biggest advice that I've received. And I think it's probably one of the things I say the most to folks who aren't married. Because people will say it to get down the aisle and get the ring and get the check off on the box. But you cannot change a man. Now, and if he does change, you want it to be because of him, right?
Yeah.
And I really do pride myself on that. There are certain things that my husband does that I don't love. There are things that I don't do that he probably doesn't love. And where you can encourage someone, you can, lead by example in certain situations. I do not try to change the man who my husband was almost 20 years ago when I met him, because number one, I firmly believe it's a fake mission. It's not going to happen. And the other thing is, if he does change for any reason, I want it to be genuine.
Yeah.
I do not want it to be on the basis of Tamika wants me to do this or Tamika's going to be mad. Naturally, I want you to take my thoughts and feelings into consideration.
Yeah.
But when you're talking about major life changes and major decisions that you're making for the person that you are, I need that to be intrinsic. Like, I need that to come from you. So, and I see a lot of people think, I can change. Yeah, okay, he'll change it. And then a year later, it's going to rear its face again. And it's probably going to be worse.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
What about you all? Advice?
I would say communication and prayer. Because, like I said, I'm the silent treatment queen. So I will hold a lot of things because I think growing up, that's how I dealt with things. It was never like, let's talk about this. I never seen anyone talk about it. Everything got swept under the rug. So when I got married, it was like, just sweep it under the rug. But as we grew, it's like communication is so key because you don't know what I'm feeling.
Right.
So I have to talk about it. And I need you to talk about it because I don't want to see you stressed out or worrying like that. So communication and prayer. Like, I know it sounds cliche, but I'm like, listen, when those hard blows hit, it's like, okay, we need to pray. We need to pray this thing out because I'm like a strong believer and I'm like, it's no way we're going to make it if we don't get this together right now.
Do you all pray together, or you talk about like pray independently?
We do both.
Mm-hmm.
We do both. There's been times I share with some friends after the Kobe situation. I literally was so sad because it was like 4 deaths within that week. I lost someone close to me. 2 of our friends lost their parents, and then the Kobe situation happened. And I didn't know him, but I was just, I had a feeling of anxiety and worry and sadness, and I was just like, I can't take it. And I was like, yo, we need to pray. And I could not stop crying. I had to grab his hands because I'm like, I don't know what's happening, and I don't like this feeling on me. And we just need to pray it out. But yeah, we definitely pray together. We definitely pray independently and with our children so that they see it.
Brenda?
I would say really just being a team,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and not fighting against each other, but trying to be together. Because sometimes I could feel like, you know, we want the same thing, but then the way you go about it to get to, you know, point A, point B, it can be different. So then you're butting heads over the method, not the outcome. So just trying to be on it, like continuing to remember, like we're on the same team. We're trying to do this together. We're trying to like make this work together. We're trying to get, you know, we both want our son to be this. So even though we might have different methods of getting to this, like we're on the same team. So that's something that's been like in the back of my mind a lot. Is just remembering like, you know, we're not fighting, you know, we're not East versus West or, you know, whatever it is. You know, AFL versus NFL. Like, you know, that's not what we're doing. Like, whatever conference is, like, we're on the same team. Let's try, you know, to dial it back and work it out together versus feeling like, oh, well, you're going to do this and you're going to do that. Let's just, you go your way, I go my way. And it's like, nah, we got to. Get it
Which
in
means
order.
that on that team, you each play different positions,
Yes.
different points. So I don't know if you all have seen this, but Chris Rock did a comedy special. It may still be on Netflix, but it was called Tambourine. And so in that, he was talking about his divorce and talking about, you know, the whole story that goes along with it. But he likened marriage to being in a band. And how somebody has to play the tambourine, right? You have the lead singer, you've got the percussionist, you've got maybe the keyboard player, maybe you've got you know, somebody else who's a backup singer. But then you got the person who plays the tambourine. They don't get all the shine, but they're back there, they're adding some of that extra zhuzh to something. So he's like, sometimes you may be singing lead, sometimes you might be on the keys, and sometimes you are playing tambourine. So you're a part of the band, you're a part of the team. Maybe you are on the practice squad. You still on the team. So when everybody else gets a ring, you get a ring too. When everybody else gets to go to Disneyland, you do too. So it's like, for me, sometimes remembering that when I want to have that control over that situation, then it's like, Crystal, you're gonna have to play tambourine on this because Harold is singing lead. You know what I mean? He's the executive producer for this one. He is the director for this one, and you're playing the tambourine. You're still in it, and you're holding the melodies. Everybody still hears the tambourine. They're like, oh, I like that tambourine.
Like, there's something about that song.
Yeah, and that would be me. But that means taking the focus off of myself and saying, okay, this doesn't have to be about me.
Right.
This is about us as a family. You know what I mean? And then when it's my time, it's gonna come back around, and I'm gonna grab that mic because it's my turn to sing.
Pass that tambourine
Yes, pass it like, honey, you better beat that tambourine. And he was like, sometimes you might just have to beat the hell out of that tambourine.
Like, get it going.
Yeah, but it's true that you are a part of a team, and if you want it to work, then you get on that tambourine and you play it with a smile.
I think this generation is so honed in on the glamorous wedding and looking pretty, and your social media, spending thousands of dollars, having everybody there, and then it's like 2 years later, what happened, sis? What happened, bro? You know, like, oh, it was hard. I didn't know marriage was all. It's work. It's definitely work. Listen.
Yeah, and I was going to say, you know, to that point, I think being able to show up for your husband or in your marriage, even when it's not, I'm not even talking about the wedding. I'm talking about when it's not glamorous in your relationship, you know? So when things aren't, going well, do you say, oh, you feed yourself, or, I'm just
Right.
using that as an example,
Right.
or, oh, well, you get the child dress, or whatever the case may be for your family dynamic.
Yeah.
But I really think it's important, again, to show up as your best self to the
Yeah.
extent possible. I'm
Yeah.
not saying I'm,
Yeah.
Sometimes you
you
gotta
know,
throw them mashed
yes,
potatoes on
but,
the plate.
listen,
I'm working real hard.
I'm still gonna make your plate, but
you're still gonna eat, and again, that conversation could go in so many different
Yeah.
directions, because you can talk about, from being domestic, you can talk about
Yeah.
sex, you can talk
Yeah.
about caring for your
Yeah.
child, you can talk about
Yeah.
financially. There's so many different ways, but the relationship is not always glamorous,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and so when it's not, how do you show up? You
Yeah.
can't, and again, back to my point, you can't be accountable for how he shows up,
Right.
but you can be
Yeah.
accountable for
Yeah.
how
That's another word.
you
right
you
there.
know how you
Yes.
show up and availing yourselves. And a lot of people, it's I can play the silent game, I can hold a grudge, I get in my feelings with the best of them, but I definitely am very clear about who I want to be as a
Right.
wife,
Yeah.
and so, and it, again, back to what I said earlier, it hasn't always been that way. We're
Yeah.
12 years in the game, and there's certain things that I'm just like, okay, all right, I get it. It doesn't always feel good, but this is what I need to do
Yeah.
for my marriage.
Yeah.
So.
Accountability.
Yeah.
yeah.
Accountability. So it's like, how are you accountable to yourself as a woman? How are you accountable to
Yeah.
yourself or to your family? As a mother, how are you accountable as a wife?
Yes.
And that doesn't equal. I think some people may think, accountability means that somebody is checking up on me or
Yeah.
like looking over my shoulder. Like, what exactly are you doing? Or what did you do or what did you not do? But it's more like, for me, I look at it as, if I say I'm going to do something, then I'm going to do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And that's the accountability, because at the end of it, I'll be able to look at myself and say, I didn't hold up my end of the bargain.
Right.
To
Yeah.
Crystal, to Trey, to Harold, and why not?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So if I want this to work, then I got to be accountable to myself, and this is what I'm going to do.
Right.
If I
Yeah.
want things to work well for me as a mom, I got to be accountable, and this is what I'm going to do. For my marriage, if I want to be accountable, then this is what I need to do.
Yeah.
And it's recognizing that kind of stuff and being aware, and sometimes having somebody to hold me accountable, talking about it with somebody, and even being honest with myself to say, you
Yeah.
did that,
Yeah.
or you didn't
Right.
really do that, Crystal. And again, if you want this team to work,
Yeah.
you want this band to sound good,
Right.
play your tambourine,
Or the triangle. Be
That's
like,
yes, right. Get on your triangle.
right on time.
Get on my triangle. Play my percussions.
Yeah.
Do whatever I need to do to make it work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So before we end, I do have some little one-word questions, right?
Okay.
One-word answers, and I think they're kind of all one word. So this will be the fun part. So, what word best describes my husband? Go.
Loyal.
Loving.
Persistent.
Consistent. Mine. These are good words. All right. This is what I love most about my husband.
Our friendship.
Biggest heart.
His personality.
Harold is super smart. He's the smartest guy I know. He's like a genius, right? All right. Now, what word would my husband use to describe me? Loud.
Thoughtful.
Crazy.
Yeah, thoughtful.
He
Oh,
goes be busy.
really?
He goes be busy.
And he says it to your face.
He gonna be busy. Like, that's his name. His nickname for me is Busy, because I'm
Really?
always
Doing something.
doing something.
Oh my goodness. All right. Being married to, and you can fill in a name, is blank. So being married to Harold is fun.
Being married to Ron is, wow, balance.
Being married to John is fun.
Being married to Andre is unpredictable.
Oh,
Okay, Jamie Foxx.
We're all like, okay, busy, unpredictable. We like it, right? So final one, marriage is worth it.
Marriage is everything.
Marriage is a movie.
Oh, that's a good one. Marriage is exciting.
Yeah. So I thank you all for joining me. It's been a good
you.
conversation. Thank you. And we encourage you all to have your own chats going. Talk about marriage, talk about what's working, get your group together and dialogue about that. So we're going to keep the conversation going, and we encourage you all to keep your chats going too.
Yeah.
See ya.